Finally, my last theme is about water in the world of the imagination and symbolism. Here, the sea and seafaring take center stage. The sea is a subject for works of imaginative literature, as well as for the writing of practical handbooks of navigation and the drawing of maps. The Quran makes it clear that it is foolhardy to embark on a sea voyage without first embracing Islam. Yet, despite the clear proofs that God will protect pious believers when they venture on the sea in ships, a deep-seated terror of the sea remains. The poet Ibn Barak al-Hudali expresses this fear very powerfully. I quote, "Will I escape from sailing on the sea? Will a humpbacked ship in the darkness every evening rush with us through the dark depths, its prow cleaving the water, persevering on dunes of stinging brine?" For their descriptions of the oceans and faraway lands, Muslim travel writers, geographers, and ethnographers drew on actual observation, but still more on a vast treasure house of myth and folklore. Just as Europe placed its imaginary concepts of unknown lands in exotically distant Asia, so too, for the Muslim world, marvels, monsters, and miracles lay further east, the home of 9/10 of the wonders of the world, as the medieval sea captain Buzurg claims in his famous book, The Wonders of India. The worlds of imagination and of folklore mingle with ethnography and travelers' tales. The taste for the fantastic was very marked and produced ajaib literature, the books of marvels. These works drew directly or indirectly on the marvel literature of classical antiquity, with its accounts of fantastic journeys to the east and of mysterious and bizarre natural phenomena. These writings were very popular in the lively scholarly circles of Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba, and they remained alive in the Islamic world until the dawn of the modern era. Using the time-honored mystical number 7, the famous collection of fairy and folk tales entitled Alf Layla wa Layla, 1001 Nights, contains the 7 voyages of Sinbad the sailor, who encapsulates the seafaring exploits of the medieval Arabs across the 7 seas. Sinbad declares at the beginning, "I have accomplished 7 extraordinary voyages, and the narrative of each one is enough to stupefy listeners with an excess of marvel." In the story of Sinbad's adventures, the sea is presented as a terrifying and dangerous force which engulfs humans who dare to brave the perils of the deep with its strange inhabitants, fishes, seahorses, whales, and other astonishing creatures. During his first voyage, Sinbad and his companions arrive at an island decked with beautiful foliage, but they discover that this island, in inverted commas, is in reality a gigantic whale. When they light a fire there, the disturbed whale stirs up monstrous waves, drowning many of Sinbad's fellow sailors. Sinbad himself is saved by God, who guides a piece of hollow wood towards him. The subsequent stories told by Sinbad highlight the awesome nature of the sea with its contrary winds and its monstrous waves that can shatter a ship into 1,000 pieces. In the stories of Abdallah the fisherman and Abdallah the merman in The 1001 Nights, Abdallah rubs a miraculous fish oil onto his body and is then able to breathe under the water and thereby to gain access to a mysterious submarine society. Why do men venture onto the sea at all? The Sinbad stories make it clear that his voyages are not just prompted by the desire to visit far countries and strange peoples. The Prophet Muhammad had established that commerce was a highly valued activity in Islam, and it was therefore scarcely surprising that maritime travel, however perilous and risky, was also motivated by what Sinbad called the trading habit. Even in this collection of tales of fantasy designed to amuse and entertain Muslim urban elites, as well as to be told in tea houses to the ordinary people, the image of water is also used metaphorically to express deeper truths about the human condition and man's aspirations in his life on earth. Determined to travel on the oceans, Sinbad quotes the words of an unknown poet. What is success? It is to dive into deeper, deeper water, and ever deeper, layer on layer of cold green mystery, for an ever rosier, ever whiter, ever greyer pearl of the sea. This brings us to the mystical resonances of water, which are well encapsulated in the legend of the water of life. Here again, religious literature and legend overlap and merge. In the Quran, Moses sets sail with a mysterious companion, identified as the so-called green prophet Al-Hidr, who then scuttles the ship. The story is later elaborated in the anonymous medieval Persian popular romance entitled the Iskandarname, in which a key element is that of none other than Alexander the Great's search for the water of life in the land of darkness. On his way, Alexander meets a mysterious guide, the green prophet, Al-Hidr, who brings him eventually to his desired destination. There, Al-Hidr drinks from the water of life and becomes immortal. But when Alexander tries to do the same, the water has disappeared. Bereft of the chance to acquire immortality, Alexander is inconsolable. Bashar Iskandar از بحار آبی حیات دل تنگ بود که امید زندگانی نمانده بود. And King Alexander became melancholy on account of the water of life, because the hope of life had not remained. Let me now say something about water as a poetic trope. Water was already a common theme for the poets of pre-Islamic Arabia. The most famous and ancient of the writers of the pre-Islamic odes, the Mu'allaqat, the 6th century poet Imrul Qais, evokes in unforgettable lines the coming of rain among the Arabian hills. Far distant is the cloud on which my eyes are fixed. Its right side seems to pour its rain on the hills of Qatan, and its left on the mountains of Asitar and Yadbul. The beasts of the wood, drowned in the floods of night, float like the roots of wild onions at the distant edge of the lake. Thus, the pre-Islamic Bedouin poet views with awe and wonder the unbridled forces of nature when the much-desired rain finally descends like a cataclysm upon the earth below. The favorite of all Arab poets, Al-Mutanabbi, praises the generosity of a patron of his, using the image of a rain-bringing cloud. وَإِنَّ سَحَابًا جَوْدُهُ مِثْلُ جُودِهِ سَحَابٌ عَلَى كُلِّ السَّحَابِ لَهُ فَخْرٌ. And indeed, a cloud whose rain is like his bounty is a cloud in which every cloud may glory. Later in the same poem, Al-Mutanabbi goes even further with his flowery rhetoric. Speaking to his patron, he says, كَأَنَّكَ بَارْدُ الْمَاءِ لَا عَيْشَ دُونَهُ, as if you are the coolness of water without which there is no life. Water imagery is also used more symbolically to express beauty, especially the body of the beloved. One pre-Islamic poet describes the space between his beloved's back and her waist as a stream of water. Her smile is like a second draught of wine mixed with pure cold water in a bend of the valley. Her saliva resembles raindrops from early morning clouds. Indeed, it is so miraculous that it can resurrect dead people from their graves. In the poetry of war, the warrior's sword of tempered steel is likened to flowing water. The phrase, sayf kathir al-ma, sword plentiful of water, denotes a sword with many wavy marks or streaks in its grain. Then there is the role of water in nature poetry. Ibn Sa'id al-Maghribi includes in his anthology of poetry from Spain a lyrical description of a river by the poet Ibn Hafaja. How beautiful the river running in its bed, more delicious to drink from than the lips of a lovely woman, curved like a bracelet and protected by flowers as if it were the Milky Way. The Ottoman poet Nejati exploits the emotional resonances of water imagery. He portrays himself in melancholy mood. By his tears and sighs, he writes, a water wheel Nejati has become. The famous Ottoman poet Nedim, with lightness of touch, describes his beloved's legs in the following lines. Two streamlets flowing from the fount of life were frozen, and now form the crystal legs of my sweet silver-bodied one. Inviting the beloved then to go with him on an excursion by boat to the Sultan's newly constructed summer house, he declares, let's go, let's play, and the time let us redeem. From the new-made fountain there, let us drink of sweet Tesneem. Let us watch the drops of life from the dragon's mouth that stream. In these carefully constructed lines, there are references to two major themes of religious tradition and legend about water, symbolized here by two fountains in the palace gardens. A newly made fountain is likened to the river Tesnim, one of the rivers of paradise, and from an ornamental fountain shaped like a dragon's mouth stream drops of life, evoking the story of the water of life. Finally, one must take account of the use of water imagery as symbolizing spiritual truths. Water in the Quran symbolizes both a spiritual blessing and knowledge. The word tanzil, used for sending down of the Quran, is linked to God's benevolence in sending down life-giving rain. There are a significant number of medieval Islamic books whose titles contain the word bahr, sea, to symbolize areas of religious experience and knowledge, as vast and as deep as the oceans. This idea is expressed by America's best-selling poet, the Persian mystic Jalaluddin Rumi. Abi darya mudera bar sar nihad va بود زنده ز دریا کی راحت چون بمردی تو ز اوصاف بشر بحر اسرارت نهاد بر فلکی سر. The sea bears up one who is dead, but if he be living, how shall he escape from the sea? When you have died to the fleshly nature, the sea of divine consciousness will raise you aloft. So it's now time that I make a few concluding remarks. Water, as I hope you have seen, is a symbol with a very wide and complex spectrum of meanings in Islam. As unformed, undifferentiated mass, it symbolizes the abundance of possibilities, or the primeval beginning of everything that exists. As such, it appears in many creation myths, including that of Islam. Water is also a symbol of bodily, emotional, and spiritual cleansing and renewal. As a destructive force, however, water is also a negative symbol, as in the story of the flood, and the movements of the waves can assume a highly threatening character. So, we see the duality of water. It is the source of life and also a destroyer of it. But this is not God's doing. The message is clear. If we will only look after this beautiful world that he has created from water, he would not have to send his punishments for our transgressions in the form of tempests and inundations. In paradise, however, the righteous will enjoy a blissful life by streams and rivers which flow with pure water for all eternity. The funerary garden echoes this on earth. Let me finish with a quotation addressed to God from the opening of a little-known 17th century Persian work entitled The Ship of Suleiman. Its complex aquatic imagery and esoteric symbolism hint at the deep spiritual truths underlying the Islamic attitude to water and to God himself who made it. I quote, "From unfathomed seas beyond existence, the ship of his omnipotence brought forth creation's present forms. So efficient is his overflowing bounty that 2 essence-producing drops from his cloud of generosity have been the source of all these seas of varied being." Thank you.
thank you, Carol. That was an absolutely breathtaking sweep of 1,000 years of tradition and folklore from beginning to end and in between. I think we've had a long evening. Should we, I'm going to pass the podium over now to Allison, but once again, Carol, thank you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful opening to the symposium, and we'd like to invite everyone across the street into the tent for a reception now. Thank you.